Tav Hey and Aleph will begin Vav Amud Beis, the two dots, 6 lines from the bottom. Zok the Gemara. Haya Gavayam Esrimama Ubalamayit Kama Memayit. If the kair was above 20 amas, so he has to now be Mamayit, he has to lower it. So he has to, the cavity, that airspace is too high. So he has to be Mamayit. So how much? Kama Mamayit. How much is he Mamayit? He has to reduce the height of the entranceway. How much does he reduce it? In fact, Mora Kama Mamayit, Kama the Tzorachle. He's Mamayit whatever is needed. Whatever is needed to bring it within 20, that the entranceway, the height of the entranceway is not more than 20. So what's the question? Mora's question says, no, Elarach B'Kama. What is the width of the area that he is Mamayit? How wide must that be? Rav Yosef Amar Tefach, Abai Amar Arba. Rav Yosef says only a Tefach, and Abai says no, it has to be Arba. So if we try to visualize it as follows, if we have the Mavli and we have the Kaira. So if this area from the top of the kaira down is more than 20, so you have to be Mamayit. So you have to build a threshold on the entranceway. You have to build a threshold that will now reduce the space over here. It has to reduce the space here so that this is less than 20. So assume that this is ground level. So this area over here has to reduce the height of the entranceway. How wide is this threshold? Is it a tafach? Is that enough? Or does it have to now extend in 4 tefachim, further 4 tefachim? That's the shaila. So what's the basis of the machlekes? So lema b'hakamif demand amar tev, the one that says tafach kasavar mutar l'shtamish tachas kair. He says you are allowed to use the area under the kaira. If you're in the Movi, and again, assume this is ground level. So this area under the kaira, if this is the street, you can use this area under the kaira. Now, there's a very basic machlokes in a kaira. Is the function of the kaira, is it to be a heker? Just a person will realize, that there's a demarcation, there's a siman, that outside here is Rishus Harabit. You can't carry here. You can carry within the Movi, but you can't carry outside. It's just a heker. It's just to make a siman. And that person should be aware that this is like a street sign, a stop sign, that you cannot carry outside this area. Is that the function of it? Or is it Mishum Mechitza? Like a Mechitza to close off the Movi with a mechitza. Now, if we would say that we would say it because we would say that the edge of it is Yered V'Seisan, like an imaginary wide comes down. So there's a basic machlekes in that. Do we say it's the outside edge that there's an imaginary wall that comes down, or is it the inside edge? Now, if it's the outside edge, so the mechitza is here. So that means that you can use the area under the kara because the mechitza, the pitikra, is coming down this way. So the mechitza is here. This is considered the interior of the Movi and it's mutter. If you hold that it's this side, chuda hapnimi, if it's the chuda hapnimi that's here, not the chuda hachitzan, if it's chuda hapnimi, then you cannot use the area underneath it, because this area is outside the mechitza. The mechitza is inside, this is outside. You can't use the area underneath it. So let us say that the one who holds it is hafach, he says motor lishtamish tachker. So he says that Rav Yosef says that it's the chudu achitzon that's yered v'seisim. You're allowed to use the area under the kair, and therefore, now you still, the Gemara is going according to this, you still need a heker for the kaira. So as long as you have a tafach over here, the area over here is now, this area is less than 20, this height of the entranceway is less than 20. when you're using this area here, which you're allowed to use this area over here, you will see the kaira, you'll have the heker for the kaira, so 1 tefach is sufficient. And Ma'anda Amar and Abai holds, our boy holds you need 4 tefach, because some are also lishtamish tachas the kaira. And Abai holds, no, it's also lishtamish tachas the kaira. Therefore, 1 tefach is not sufficient, because you can't use this area over here. So you need an area when you're standing here on the inside to still be able to see the kaira. So it has to extend more than the tefach. It has to extend into the movay, so that when you're standing inside the movay, and now at the end of the movay, you'll be able to see the kaira because it's not higher than 20. Now, once it has to be more than a tefach, the next increment, the next significant area is dalet tefachim, so it has to be dalet tefachim. The Gemara says, Loi, no, maybe I'll explain the machlekes differently. Loi, the kuli al megasavri mutal ishtamish tachas hakar. Really, I'll tell you that everyone holds you are allowed to use the area underneath the kair. Ubaha kamiflegi, and this is the machlekes, mar savar kar mishum heker. Rav Yosef holds that the kair is mishum heker. So therefore, as long as you have an area of a tefach of depth, and you minimize the height of the entranceway, then you have a heker. You can use area under the kaira. You'll see the kaira. You'll have a heker, and you'll know that the area outside is the Rishus Rabbi. Umar savar kair mishum mechitza. But Abaya holds that a kair is mishum mechitza. Now, a mechitza can only be a mechitza if it's a kair mechitza. We will only say that the chuda hachitza is yor v'seisem if it covers an area of dalet al dalet. A mechitza can only be serve as a mechitza if it covers an area of dalet al dalet. And therefore, we have to have a platform which is dalet al dalet. Because if we don't, then it's not covering an area of dalet al dalet. So it cannot be the chuda hachitza, they cannot come down, it cannot serve as a mechitza. Now, the Rishonim speak out, we have to add an additional element over here. That according to this pshat in the Gemara, according to Abaya, if the kaira is higher than 20, then we won't say Yared V'Saisim. So that even though the movay itself is more than Dalet, but we can't say Yared V'Saisim on the movay, which is more than Dalet, because it's higher than 20. We have to have a platform. We have to have a platform which now brings the kaira within Dalet, but that platform has to be. We have to have a platform that brings the kaira, within 20. That brings the kaira within 20. But that platform has to be Dalet, because if it's less than Dalet Tefachim, according to this pshat in the Gemara, you won't say Yared V'Saisim. So therefore, the platform, we have to raise it up so that there's an area of Dalet that is at least Dalet al Dalet that is within 20. Now, according to the first Mahalach in the Gemara, that wasn't an issue. That we would have said that it's Yared V'Saisim and it can serve as a mechitza even if it's higher than 20. And we didn't have that issue. Therefore, we explained according to the first approach differently, if it's whether it's mutar l'shtamish tachas l'kar or not. But according to this approach in the Gemara, it's holding that we will not say that the chuda chitzon is Yared V'Saisim if it's higher than 20. We need, therefore, to build a platform to minimize this height of the entranceway, to minimize it so that it's less than 20, so that we can say Yared V'Saisim. But it's only Yared V'Saisim if you have the additional element that is covering an area and closing an area, which is Dalet al Dalet. That's why the platform has to be Dalet al Dalet. The Gemara says the Kuli Alma Kar Mishum Heker. Maybe I'll tell you that everyone holds it's Mishum Heker and not Mechitza. So what's the machlekes? V'hocha beheker shel mata ubeger shel mata kamiflegi. The machlekes is the heker on top, the kaira, the width of the kaira on top, and the heker when you're standing on the bottom. The mar savar minun heker shel mata ke heker shel mal. Just like the kaira itself only has to be a tefach, therefore he holds the heker shel mata, that the heker you need when you're standing on the bottom similarly only has to be a heker that is when you're standing on a place which is a tefach. And the other one says, Abaye says, no, we don't say that it's the same. The kaira only has to be a tefach. However, the mata, when you're standing on the bottom, you have to be able to see it for a distance of more than a tefach. So once it's more than a tefach, the next increment, the next level is dalet tvachim. Everyone agrees that it is, and therefore essentially Abaye would also agree that's enough to have a tefach. However, but over here, the reason that Abaye says you need dalet tvachim is because we're afraid that on the bar people will step on the floor, stomp on it, and flatten it out, compress it, and this tefach, the width of the tefach, will become less than a tefach. And therefore he says you have to have more than a tefach because people will stomp on it, step on it, and it'll therefore thin it out, compress it, it'll be less than a tefach. The next increment is dalet tvachim, and Rav Yosef is not geyser. And Rav Yosef says we're not concerned. So the other side of it is if the height of it is less than 10 tvachim, so it has to the entranceway, the height of the entranceway has to be raised. So if it's so now you have to dig it out. You have to dig out an area to make an indentation to make the height more than 10 tvachim. What is the area that you're chaykek? Again, the Gemara asks, you're chaykek, you dig out as much as needed. If it needs an additional depth of a tefach, it's a tefach. If it needs an additional depth of 5 tvachim, it's 5 tvachim. What's the question? Now the question is, when you're digging out, how deep into the mavoi does it go? How that ditch, how far into the mavoi does it go? Rav Yosef Amar Dalet, Abaye Amar Arba Amayis. And Rav Yosef over here says Dalet Tvachim, and Abaye says Arba Amayis. So what is the basis of their machlekes? Lema b'Ravami v'Ravasi kamiflagi. Let's say they're arguing whether we accept this halacha. Ravami Ravasi. Ditmar mavoi shenifrat mitzida klape roishai. If the mavoi had a break, it had a breach towards the front of the mavoi. So if the mavoi now, the side wall, let's say it was broken, and then there was a break over here. So now this wall is broken. There's a gap over here. So what do they say? Now this is the front of the mavoi, klape roishai. It's on the side. The side wall has a break, klape roishai. So itmar mishmei v'Ravasi mi eisham pas daled mater b'pirtza ades. If there is a pas, if this has a width of daled, so there still is a board or a section that is daled, that is daled wide over here. So if you still have a section that is, or if you have a pas daled, then we don't consider it that the mavoi has, the wall is broken open. So they say yesham pas daled mater b'pirtza ades. Then if the gap over here, even if the opening is 10 amas, then it still will be kosher. Then we would still consider it to be not a pirza. Up until dalet, it would be still considered to be a pesach, an opening, and therefore we would say that it's still kosher. So therefore, as long as I have this board, which is dalet tvachim, then I could say that it's still considered a wall. Now it has to be dalet 4 tvachim. It has to have a width of 4 tvachim. Then I'll say I have a mavoi with an opening. I have a mavoi, there's a wall here, there's a wall here, and this is considered just a Pesach. V'imlav, but if it doesn't have a pas daled tvachim, pachas mishloisha matim. If the gap is within 3, the opening is only within 3, So it's just a small opening over here. So then it'll say that if it's just a small opening, then they'd say Lovid is considered connected, and therefore it's not considered to be broken open. But if not, so if it's Pachas Bimla, Pachas Ma Shleisha Matir, Shleisha in a Matir. So let us say Rav Yosef Islay the Ravami. Let us say Rav Yosef, who says that you only need Dalet Tvachim, he holds like Ravami that the length of a movi only has to be Dalet Tvachim, and that's why the pas if it's Dalet, if it's 4 Tvachim, if it has a the width of 4 Tvachim, it has a Hechsher movi. And therefore, similarly, Rav Yosef says when you dig out the hole, that to make it the necessary height of the mavoi, it only has to continue into the mavoi for Dalet Tvachim, because the Hechsher of mavoi is Dalet Tvachim. L'Abaye, Leslie Ravami. But Abaye does not hold of that, and he holds that you need Dalet Amas. Amr Abaye says, no, not necessarily. He says, I could hold a Ravami as well. Amr Abaye, Hasam Seif Mavoi. Over there, you had a movi which was kosher. You had the length of a movi and it was kosher. Now, as you're talking about ruining a movi, well, as long as you can still retain an area of Dalet Tvachim, it still retains the hechsher of the movi. But Hacha, you didn't have a movi to begin with. If you didn't have the height of 10 Tvachim, you never had a movi. So over here, Hacha Tchilas movi, Ikar Ba'amas in Iloi Loi. So you need Arba Amas, and if not, not. Amar Abai Mino Aminallah, and Abai says, what's my proof? Yisanya, so what's my proof? Because the Brisa says, Ein Movi Niter Belechi V'Kaira. A Movi can only be Niter with Lechi Kaira in order to be considered a Movi, and to be Macher to Lechi Kaira, Achiyu Batim V'Chatzeres P'suchim L'Seichem. It has to have Batim V'Chatzeres opened into the Movi. So you have to have at least a chotzer with at least 2 batim, and so you have houses. There's a courtyard. They open up into the movi, and here also. So you need at least these and have openings on each side. Now a Pesach has to be Dalet Tvachim, and it also has to have also mezuzahs. It has to have side posts. It needs a frame. So if you have to have film movie, you have to have that there are the openings from the chatzerais, from the courtyards, are open into the movie, and each opening has to be more than Dalet Tvachim, because the opening itself is Dalet, and you need also the posts, the frames. So a movie has to be longer than Dalet Tvachim. It can't be just Dalet Tvachim, it has to be longer. So and if it's only bedalet, you're not going to be able to have sokim opening up into it. So obviously the movi has to be longer than dalet. Maybe you'll say the pasuk. Maybe you'll say no, the configuration is totally different. We're talking where it's open in the back wall of the movi. So we're talking where the Mavoi, the chatzeres and the bottom of the chatzeres are open to the Mavoi, and they're open to the Mavoi that the Mavoi doesn't run along the length, so to speak. It's on the back wall. You have the chatzeres, the bottom. They're open into the Mavoi over here, and this area is more than Dalet, but the area over here is only Dalet. So therefore, you have enough room. You have ample room for the psachim, for the openings to come into the mavui. They can come into the mavui. They're open from the chatzeres. From their chatzeres, they're open into the mavui here. You have the Pesach coming in. But this area over here, this distance over here, the span is only Dalet. This is much more than Dalet, so there's room for the openings to come in. But for Gemara, how can you say that? that still cannot be kosher, because we say we have a halacha. Where is the hechsher of a mavi? Where is it kosher? Kol she'arka yisrael rochba. The oirech has to be more than the roichev. So it has to be that the oirech of it, the length of it, is more than the roichev. Now over here in this configuration, the oirech is only daled. The roichev is more. So it's just the opposite of the way it should be. The Rishus Rabim is over here. So over here it comes out that the oirech is less than the roichev, which is just the opposite of the way it's supposed to be. So doesn't that show you, therefore, that the length of a mavi has to be more than dalet tvachim? Because otherwise, how are you going to have the psachim can't be on the back wall, and therefore the psachim have to be opening up into the mavi. And therefore, you need psachim over here, which are more than dalet tvachim. So this length has to be more than dalet tvachim. So Rabbi says, I have a raya. The Rav Yosef, he says it's not a raya. He says the pasuk lebekeren zovis. Really, I'll tell you, yes, the openings are along the side, and really, yes, you need openings which are more than dalet. But I can tell you that the configuration of it is as follows: that it goes on a diagonal. So, really, the length of the mavi is dalet, but the length of these areas are more than dalet. It's not straight walls; the walls are on a diagonal. So, therefore, even though this distance over here, this distance here is only dalet, but the length along here is more than dalet, and have room, therefore, for psachim, which are more than dalet, which have an opening of dalet plus the frame. So the openings are more than dalet. But the length of the mavi, walking in a straight line, the length of the mavi in itself is only dalet. Amar Abaye Menamino. Abaye says, what's my raya that the length of the mavi has to be dalet amos? The Amar Rami Bar Chama Amar Rav Huna Lechi Haboilet Midayf Nishal Mavoim. If you have a lechi that extends from the wall of the mavi, extends across the opening of the mavi. So, for instance, let's assume over here that the opening of the mavi is on this side. This is the street, just to make it easier to visualize. If you have a lechi, so a mavi is nitcher with a lechi. There's a kaira, there's a lechi, there's a vertical post. If it extends, and it's a lechi that extends and has a width to it, and it extends across into the opening of the mavi. So now, do we look at this as a lechi, or do we look at this as a wall, as part of the wall of the mavi, just an L-shaped wall? So if you have a lechi, if this is less than arba amas, it's needed mishum lechi. So it's matcha this area. However, it's pachas marba amas needed mishum leveni tzorach lechi alatira, and you don't need another lechi. This still retains its nature characteristic as a lechi, and you don't need another lechi. But dalet ama is needed mishum mavli. But if this is dalet amas, and so if this lechi, so we view this as something wider, if it's dalet amas, and it comes across dalet amas, we view this as just being as part of the wall of the mavi. It's an L-shaped wall. Then you need another lechi to be matir the mavi, because you need another lechi, because this is not considered a lechi. So the fact that the criteria is dalet amas, doesn't that show you that dalet amas is a length of a mavi, and once this lechi is dalet amas or more, you can't treat it as a lechi, it becomes part of the mavi. So that shows you that the depth of a mavi is dalet amas. So, but Rav Yosef says, he says, no, there's no connection between the two. To say that it's not a lechi, that it's not a post, to say that it's a wall, then you need takadalat amas. But but to say the movi itself, a movi could be even with, you can have a small movi. You can have a small movi with dalat tvachim. To say something is a wall and not a lechi, it has to be dalat amas. But the length of the movi, Rav says there's no connection. It can even be dalat tvachim.